December 1986. I'm still in the Air Force, still in California, still didn't have a lot of time to read. There's only 3 books to talk about this week. I assume I was still getting acclimated to my job in the area. I believe I bought a car sometime during December. I might have even bought it in November. Gotta have a car to drive around California. Vandenberg Air Force Base. I think this is probably the first December that I did not spend in Ohio. First time in my life. No snow for the winter, for Christmas. Can't say it was a bad thing. Gotta love that California weather, at least back in 1986. So, what 3 books did I read? Well, let me tell you. The first book I read in December of 1986 was Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. Not a fan. Yeah, this book didn't do anything for me. Do I even need to tell you what it's about? A guy interviewing a vampire, learning his history, learning about Lestat and some little girl vampire played by, what's her name? I can't think of it. She was a little kid at the time in the movie. Yeah, did not like this book. I've only read one other Anne Rice book in my life, and that was years after this, at the urging of somebody. But yeah, Interview with the Vampire, Anne Rice. I don't know. It bored me. I didn't care about the characters. I'm not the biggest fan of vampires to begin with. When I do read vampires, I want them to be monstrous. I mean, one of my favorite horror novels of all time is a vampire novel, but it's a very punk rock vampire novel. And we'll get to that. That's going to come up on this list in the relatively near future. But just the romantic types of vampires and that kind of thing do not interest me. I want them ripping people's throats out, and I know these are relatively traditional vampires, but it's still had the feel of a romance story, I guess. I don't know. Didn't interest me. Interview with the Vampire. Number 2 in December of 1986, Another Fine Myth. M-Y-T-H, Another Fine Myth by Robert Asprin. I believe this is the first in a series of myth adventure books. And get my little notebook here. So the main character is a guy named Skeeve. He is a magician's apprentice and a thief. And after his master is assassinated, he teams up with a demon named Oz, A-A-H-Z, Oz, and some other weird fantasy type folk to seek revenge and goes on crazy adventures. This is a lighthearted, funny comedy fantasy. You can tell by the pun in the title, I think. These are, I mean, they're fun. They're fun little books. More will come along on the list, I believe. I know I've read a few things by Robert Asprin. The original, I think, had a typical sort of cover, but if anyone's familiar with these books, I think the more famous versions are those that were illustrated by Phil Foglio, however you say his name. Instantly recognizable art to me, anyway. And if I ever do pick these up again, I'm gonna probably look for those with the Phil Foglio artwork. Although the covers for the originals were pretty cool. So, maybe I'll take what I can get. Who the hell knows? Anyway, that's the second book. Another Fine Myth by Robert Asprin. If you like lighthearted fantasy, want to get away from that Lord of the Rings type stuff, these are fun little books. And then the third thing I read was Doc Savage Omnibus Volume 1 by Kenneth Robeson. However you say his name. There are 4 of the Doc Savage adventures in this. The All-White Elf, The Running Skeletons, The Angry Canary, and The Swooning Lady. And I believe these are Bantam, or is it Bantam that published these? I think so. And I believe what they did, and looking at my books over there, when they started reprinting the Doc Savage books, you got one adventure per book. I think the magazines even said, like a novel length, even though they're like 180 pages. Um, Printed a whole ton of those as single books. I'm not sure exactly how many, but there's a ton of them. And then maybe it was a cost cutting thing. I don't know. But they started printing 2 adventures per book. And then eventually started printing the omnibus editions, which had 4 or 5 per book. One of the things about this particular volume, omnibus number 1, or volume 1, is this is, I think the first story takes place pre-World War II. The other 3 are set during World War II. But you start to get a change in the characters. Doc Savage is not the perfect sort of human specimen that he was before. He makes mistakes. He's well, like I said, he's not perfect. He's not able to accomplish everything exactly the way he plans to. Things don't always go right for him. I think Long Tom and Johnny, maybe Rennie, aren't as prominent. The 3 of his companions, I know, eventually fell aside, and it was mainly like Doc, Monk, and Ham. And we start to see that here in this one, in these particular stories. I don't know if the publisher, the authors, whomever felt they should make Doc Savage more human, changing times, changing world, changing stories. Can't say. Wasn't around at the time. But anyway, you got 4 Doc Savage stories in one book. I think they're always fun. I actually like when things started to change, because you don't want the same thing over and over again. And character growth, especially over hundreds of stories, you're going to want that, even if it's growth in the wrong direction. Does that make sense? I don't know. But anyway, that was it. 3rd book I read in December 1986, Doc Savage Omnibus Volume 1. Not a lot, but again, I was in a new place with a new job, being in the military. So, I'll tell you what, though. I've looked ahead to January 1987. We're getting a lot, huge amounts of books. Huge amounts. Just wait. Just you wait and see. All right, but for those of you who watched last week's, one of the books I read was The Timekeeper Conspiracy by Simon Hawke, part of the Time Wars series. And I went out to the used bookstore today, just for the hell of it, and I picked up some Time Wars books. And what I've got here is book number 1, The Ivanhoe Gambit. Can you see that? Then, book number 2. This is the one I was talking about last week, The Timekeeper Conspiracy. You can see it's Three Musketeers type of stuff. And then I have book number 3, The Pimpernel Plot, which I feel like was the first one I read. I might have said last week Timekeeper Conspiracy was the first one I read, but for some reason, I'm feeling like this was. I didn't find book 4, but they had book 5, The Nautilus Sanction, which is where things get even stranger. They add some different elements to this one. So I picked these up today. I'm very happy about that. I'll have to look for 4, obviously, and 6, 7, and 8. I don't know if they go higher than that. I can think of at least 2 others. Titles are on the tip of my brain. I know there's at least 2 others. Maybe 3 or even more. But there you go. You'll see these again as they come up in my reading remembrances. But that was a nice little find. I also got some really cool comic book stuff while I was at the store. So that's it. December 1986. 3 books. Interview with the Vampire, Another Fine Myth. Doc Savage Omnibus Volume 1. So, if you have any comments, questions, or corrections for this video, please leave them in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. I don't have anything else to say about this, so until next time, read more books.